Designyatra. This is the second time I've been here. I was here 6 years ago. I'm so happy to be back. Although I have to say, after that last presentation, I can't follow that. I think you should all just go right now, because it's just that was fucking amazing. Anyway, I'm Canadian. I live on the west coast of Canada. I live on an island called Bowen Island, which is the one that you see in the foreground here. That's my dog Moser. Before I start into my actual presentation, I just want to say that we've heard from so many different kinds of designers over the past 3 days, working in different disciplines with different approaches and different philosophies. And so before I go into my own work, I want to take this privilege of going last to have the last word on one thing in particular. And I have Orlando Matthias's permission to pick on him a little bit. Do you remember his presentation? He's a super nice guy. I've been talking to him a lot. But I do really disagree with some of the things that he said. And so he told me that it's all right if I tell you that I disagree. So do you remember this drawing? His was much tidier than mine. When I saw this, I nearly went through the roof. Orlando told me that he kind of regrets this graph a little bit because, what I noticed is that the intention is that it leaves ego and craft behind in favor of strategy and collaboration. And he also says design and strategy makes a bigger impact. And I have to ask, for whom? And I think that it makes a bigger impact for commerce, for the client and the commercial outcome. But I say that art in design makes a bigger impact. And the bigger impact it makes is on culture. So art and design contributes to culture. Where fine art is kept hidden in galleries, art is readily available to the people through mass production. And therefore it has more impact and longevity than strategic design. This is where I am. And my measures of success are, does it bring joy? We heard somebody say that earlier today. Does it inspire? Does it promote thought? Can you look at it many times? Can it become part of design culture? And I wonder, will my work be referred to in the history of design? So, but ultimately, there are, different kinds of design and different ways to do all of them. And you don't have to just pick one to stand behind. You don't have to just, go on ego or go on strategy. But depending on the different kinds of design, you're going to use different ways of approaching that. And they're going to be personal to you and personal to your team. And, some are going to be strategic and have love in them, and some are not. And it's really not an either or. So although I'm picking on Orlando a little bit, I'm sure that we actually agree that there's, you don't have to be this or that. Okay, so my dog says let's get going with this. Why does this keep not? Okay. So my title of my talk here is My Epic Journey to Has-Been. And after seeing the presentations that we've seen over this conference, with so much movement and action and video and animation and everything, I so fucking feel like a has-been right now. I started my life in design working as a book typesetter from about 1983 to 1993. I'm a lot older than most of the other speakers here. And then I started a design company with a friend and did the usual design stuff for about 10 years. And then I got very tired of being a designer, of being basically a strategic designer, and wanted to do something more personal and more artistic. So I left my company and I went out on my own to pursue this passion of ornamentalism that I had. And this little venture could so easily have failed, but it didn't. And it's from this work that my real career was born. Now, this is a story that my American friends especially like very much. And the story is, in a nutshell, I left the mundane job of being an ordinary graphic designer to follow what I love, and lo, look where I am today, speaking to you in India. And the Americans love this story because of the message, if you follow your dreams and do what you love, you will succeed. And that's a very nice message. And, but even though it happened to me once, I don't think it's universally true. And I know that in design and in art and in music and in theater and in dance, there are thousands, if not millions of people out there doing really fucking outstanding work, and they're not getting noticed. So I'm going to get back to that in a moment. So when I was an ordinary graphic designer, I had this rather misguided idea of what the sort of mountain of design looked like. And at the top of the mountain was Paul Lachère and Stefan Sagmeister and Pentagram. And then I had this friend in Vancouver who was sort of my idol as a young designer. His name was Ray Horenko. I thought he was like pretty near the top, and that I thought myself I was a little bit above him. But it's really actually, so it's actually more like this. So at the bottom are the bad designers. There's lots and lots of bad designers, and we won't talk about them. And then there's this huge chunk in the middle that's good designers. And these designers, they do good work, they do solid, well-executed work, they're locally known and admired, they win some awards, they have lots of clients, they have some small jobs for big clients. And I see a lot of work for good designers when I judge design competitions, and I've judged quite a few. And it's kind of like I used to be in there. I remember being a good designer, and there's nothing wrong with the work. It's good work, but it's not exceptional. And so then above that, you get really great work, and you start to get like people with regional fame and national fame, and then fantastic work, and people with international fame, and that's like transcendent work. And then, Paula and Stefan are still at the very top there. Okay, so the question is, how do you crack that? How do you get from being a good designer who's winning some awards to being a great designer who becomes and then gets asked to speak at places like India and travel around the world and becomes recognized for your work, which is a really, really, really great feeling to be internationally recognized for your work. So how do you enter those top tiers? And here's the thing that most people don't want to say. There's a break in that mountain between the good designers and the great and famous ones. And so while you certainly have to be unique and smart and do interesting and great work, almost the only way across that divide is luck. And people really don't want to hear this. But that might be getting the attention of a top-tier designer and impressing them with your work. It might be the luck of going to the right school and meeting the right people. It might be something totally unexpected. And here's where my luck came from. In 2003, I started following a design blog called Speak Up. It was the first blog about design on the internet. And in 2004, I started writing for it. I'm a good writer, and this being the first blog for design, everyone was on it. Certainly everyone in North America, and the big American designers. So small independent designers to very big influential designers like Michael Bierut at Pentagram and Paula. So first they noticed me for my writing, and then I made this t-shirt design for the blog. They had a t-shirt competition. I don't usually enter t-shirt competitions, but I did, and I won it. And I got the attention of a very important American designer named Rick Valicenti. So Rick really loved that t-shirt design, and he asked me to become involved in one of his typographic projects, the kind of thing that he was doing all the time. And so I created this, it's a bit of a long story that I don't have time to tell, but I created this sort of pixelated alphabet with words for him. And then Details magazine also saw that Speak Up t-shirt, and this is where I got my first commission after I had left my design firm. So I spent about a year, like, you know, futzing about and just like making stuff and trying to get it out there. And then that Speak Up t-shirt happened, and because of doing this thing that I actually thought was a waste of time, which was spending time writing on a blog, and not being aware that a lot of really influential designers were reading that blog, and also art directors, I ended up getting my first job, and all the other jobs came after this. And then in 2005, Stefan Sagmeister asked me to create similar type from the Speak Up t-shirt for a project of his. So first I got the attention of Rick Valicenti. Stefan really likes Rick, and then Stefan noticed me, and you know, that is just like, it's all pure luck. Well, a little bit of talent too. So my work was always very organic and almost always contained custom lettering. But I wasn't a historicist. I've never been interested in recreating what has been done better in the past. So I was fusing things, trying to make new ways to evoke and reference historical forms. And I was interested in making not only letter forms, but diagrams with organic forms, and making things that were nothing like anything I'd ever seen before. So at this point, I was here. I'd had my little piece of luck, and I jumped to the very bottom of that part of the mountain, and so all I had to do was keep working and do the best work that I possibly could, which I did. And so people outside of the country had heard of me. And I can't emphasize enough that I never set out to get famous. Like, this wasn't the goal of mine. I just wanted to earn a living doing something that I enjoyed doing, something that I loved. And that's still my goal. But the success, it came really suddenly and really surprisingly. And I don't consider it as something that I achieved, but as something that happened to me. So in 2006, things started to pick up. And this kind of work with loops and swirls, it looks very familiar now. But when I was doing this, people were freaking out over it. Prior to this, design was firmly in what I call the Martha Stewart Era, which was soft and clean and spare. It's not modernism, which I love, but it's sort of like this inoffensive, racially white style popularized by Martha Stewart magazine. And I was deliberately saying, fuck off to that kind of work. I was rubbing their noses in decoration, which was a dirty word in design, and often still is. And I was also fighting girlishness. So while using these so-called feminine forms, I was trying to make it less girly, so stranger, more intriguing, more of a juxtaposition. And then also coming back to Rick Valicenti, he offered me a paper promotion in the form of this fox. The one on the end is the cover of a Fox River paper promotion, which was, like I can't remember, like 32-page booklet that got, 100,000 copies printed and sent out to every single designer in America. So that was another huge thing that came out of that. Stefan Sagmeister again asked me to work on a project of his. This one it's in his Austrian dialect. And I started to work with materials. So instead of, most of that stuff was done in Illustrator, I started making things and shooting them. And then, so by 2007, I was at my most productive. 2007 was the year I did the most work and made the most money, and it seemed like everything I did got attention. And in the fall of this year, in the fall of that year of 2007, I spoke on the main stage at the big American AIGA conference, which was a fucking super huge deal to me. So my so-called style was expanding. I played with dimensionality. I did a lot of brain work, a lot of thinking. There's logic to the things that I do. I never really liked just willy-nilly adding swirly bits, except for this, which was not my fault. But so I was commissioned to do this by Pentagram, by Michael Beirut, and then it was handed straight off to Saks Fifth Avenue. And so this was the first part, which I didn't like, but the second part was to make words that were that looked like the things that they represented, and that I enjoyed because it involved using my brain. I like to make things more difficult. So Stefan noticed a thing that I had done in sugar in the Fox River paper book, and he asked me to do more of this for him. So these are made in sugar, of his words, my work. And then I created one of the best things I've ever made, which is this poster. And the reason why I love it is because it's a pattern. I'm totally into patterns. And it's got this typography that is made out of the pattern. The typography is not stuck on top in a typeface or anything. It's actually made out of the parts of the pattern. Okay, so now I'm here, and so you get up to this point. The difference between getting up to the very top and where I was there is hard work. And I've never really been very good at hard work. I've never worked hard enough to get that far. But things continued to go well for me. My work expanded further, and I started working by hand more. So I started to leave. I started to be more like 50% computer work and 50% by hand. And also, I knew that at this point that I had a choice, that I could, kind of continue to do the type with the swirls and stuff like that and be known for the girl who does the swirly type, and just kind of like do lots and lots of that for advertising. But I was already getting bored with it, and I wanted to keep moving, and I wanted to start working with my own writing, personal pieces like little poems. And I was always too curious and always thinking and moving on to new ideas. I started working with special materials, and increasingly, this one's laser cut, and that's drawn in foil, and just making things that are difficult to appreciate in pictures, but really have to be seen in person to be appreciated. I did some more work for Saks Fifth Avenue. And then in the fall of 2008, I was accepted to AGI, which is Alliance Graphique Internationale. And this was the highest accolade I can possibly get, short of the Order of Canada, which is an actual medal. I don't think I'm going to get that. But it was acceptance of my work by a group of designers, some of the best designers in the world, and I was just so astonished to be embraced by them, and people whose work was so different from mine. Only Massimo Vignelli hated me. We never spoke, but he wouldn't look at me, and I never had a conversation. I know he wanted to kill me. But also by this time I was starting to get tired of typography, custom type, and the work I've typically become known for. So, when I was asked to do for a poster for Pop Tech over here, I did something that had no words at all and was only form and patterns and structure. So my work at this point started to get an increasing emphasis on patterns and pull away from type and towards image. I did some fabric work for Marian. And then I spent most of 2009 working on the writing, illustration, and design of my book, I Wonder. I wanted to created an illuminated manuscript, while at the same time challenging the illuminated manuscript. And a variety of media styles to suit the written pieces. I wanted to prove that words and image should be combined. that you can design in such a way that the words are enhanced by the design so that they cannot be separated. I was really revolting against the common book practice of separating imagery into boxes away from the text and making the whole thing like a conversation between the graphics and the writing. And I was also revolting from all the rules of typography and book design that I was trained in, 20-some years earlier. So in these spreads, also in a chapter on honor, I was elevating the mundane into something beautiful. I was honoring the text with ornament and using pasta to make this kind of Baroque surround. So this book, which was completed in 2009, is my masterpiece. When it was published in 2010, I thought, okay, now I can die. I've done the best I can do. It's published. I have at last achieved something. It's going to go. But I didn't die, and life goes on. So, now at this point, I'm far more interested in structure and pattern than I am in type. I love figuring things out, how they're going to fit, and how they're going to work. These are 2 posters for the band The National. Using patterns to make images. Using patterns and structure. Sake. And I got some fantastic opportunities to work with objects, a table, a sailboat, a chair. I made some wallpaper. I made more fabric from a harem. But my commissioned work was definitely falling off at this point. I was getting more rejections, and by 2011, things were not going well at all. I think that I had this body of work that people had really liked. I insisted upon continuing to follow my heart and moving on from it, naively thinking that I would take them, that they would come with me. And some of them did. Some of them, really liked what I did and were willing to trust me. And a lot of people really just wanted me to keep recreating the stuff that I'd done before. And I just wasn't interested in doing that. But then something came along that allowed me to really try out new things. There's an illustration out of the UK called Varoom, and it hired me to do a centerfold for every issue. It paid almost nothing, but I had a centerfold to do whatever I want based it on each issue's theme. And this really allowed me to start experimenting a lot more, moving even further away from the work that I'd done before. Doing things with writing, doing things with textures and structure, doing things that are really a lot more like art. That one down there is needle pointed in. I needle pointed in My Little Pony hair. This was a piece in stickers that I did, which will come back later. More stickers and reflective tape, I really like shiny things. Did a pattern in plasticine. Worked with foil and photography and weaving with ribbons. And I really developed this aversion to computers. And so where before I had spent, a good 50% of my time making work on the computer, I now almost never do. And I really love just sitting and making things and drawing. And there's something different happens in my brain when I do that. I'm much more in control. I'm much more calm, and I'm a lot happier. I started making art because I wasn't getting much work. But then in 2011, Thames Hudson asked me to do a monograph. So I spent most of 2011 writing and designing it. It's a gigantic tome and weighs 6 pounds, which is detrimental to sending it out to people. So it was 2013 when it was published, and I thought, okay, now I can die. I've made my little scratch on design history, and if I die tomorrow, I can rest in peace. But I didn't die. And this is the thing about success. You know, you have to keep being ever more successful, or you you feel crappy about yourself. And you're not only comparing yourself to what other people are doing, you're comparing yourself to what you've done in the past, and looking back and saying, oh, I was so much better then, and you know, it just never stops unless you die. You know, keep waiting for that. So I never made it to the tippy top, you know, I spent several years from about 2006 to 2009 working all the time. But lately, you know, I just can't be bothered. I'm also a terrible self-promoter. You know, I have a really weird life. I should have been, you know, rich and famous and you know, getting tons of work. I go to these kind of conferences, and I know that all the other speakers are rushing off to their rooms to, you know, answer emails and do work and catch up on stuff and deal with, you know, clients that are upset about things. And I'm like, you know, I don't really have anything to do. Might write to my dog. And then, so some people who made it to the very tippy top become icons when their careers are over or when they die. You know, so like Paul Rand and Saul Bass, Milton Glaser, he's not dead yet, but he's still an icon. But there's this other side of the mountain that I didn't tell you about, and there's a little chunk off to the side where the has-beens go, and so that's where I am now. I'm down with the has-beens, but I'm not dead. So I still do stuff. I published a sort of product of certificates for everyday things, which I won't go into. Come on. Damn it. I'm still, you know, working with materials, still trying to elevate the mundane things by, you know, working with beans and rice and I get a lot of things on eBay. I spend a lot of time on eBay, and well, not a lot. I have to curb it, but you know, buying 10,000 buttons and then making stuff out of them. And then earlier last year, I did we planned a new version of I Wonder, a paperback edition, which I just switched out the gold ink for silver. And then I wrote a new chapter for it, so that came out this year. I still get some fun opportunities. In 2015, I was hired to go up into the Rocky Mountains for British Columbia Tourism and create something while they filmed me. And I took my dog, and we spent a few days in the mountains, and I made this photographic pattern thing. In 2016, I made a 360-degree VR piece. This is obviously a still, but it's images of water, and they're all moving, and it's like super trippy when you put the VR piece inside. You're inside a geodesic dome with all this water moving all around. That was super fun. I made another, I think, really fantastic poster out of dirt. That's this one here. It says coexistence, and that's just laid down, and you know, that's the poster destroyed. I really like my work. I think I'm getting better and better, even though it has a smaller and smaller audience. And then just this year, I did this piece for the National Book Festival in Washington. So I'm always moving and changing, and that's been really great for me, but it's been detrimental to gaining client work. And maybe they don't like my new work, or maybe they can't, you know, they just don't want to keep up with what I'm doing. I think maybe I confuse them, they don't know what to expect. Or really, you know, in reality, maybe I'm just like too static, too flat, and not, you know, not moving and doing 3D and animation and all the stuff the cool stuff that people here have been showing us these past 3 days. So I've been making art, making large pieces of, well, large-ish pieces of art. I've been trying to loosen up because my work has always been really tight. So I'm trying to, be more loose, be less controlled in what I do, and allow things to be more varied and have more mistakes. My favorite stuff that I've been working on lately, I've been back to that thing that I made out of stickers. I've been working with stickers. I get these children's stickers, again on eBay, and so I make these big things with them. They're not this big, there, but this one is called Glory, Glory. It's about religion and guns. That one's called Faith. It's about religion and Santa Claus and unicorns. And that one down there is called Killjoy. It's got butterflies and warplanes in it. These are some details of the next one's coming up. This one is called Crash, and it's got all these cars crashing into each other. And I've got a zillion generic superhero stickers that I used for that one there. So there's the superhero one. This one's called Flower Power. There's Crash. And then that's the latest one, which is called Exodus. And it shows, there's the planet Earth in the center, and it shows all the billionaires leaving planet Earth in their spaceships, and they go out to the other dead planets, and then they die there and they turn into angels. And this is a piece I installed a month ago in a gallery in New York. It's made of paper clips placed by hand. It's 26 feet long. And I spent 2 days on the floor, with my back and knees absolutely killing me. But I was so happy just to be sitting there playing with paper clips and laying them down, and that was just really great. So, as I said, I'm not rich and I'm not busy, and I often wonder how long this can go on, why I'm still functioning and paying the bills, and when reality is going to come crashing down on me. I'm a has-been, but I have been successful by my measure of success. I've made things that are joyful and things that people want to spend time with. I'm amazed to have been contacted by hundreds of people who tell me that I've inspired them. I've had work collected in design books and magazines, and some of my work has been collected for museums. Can you scroll down just a little bit here? Never mind. Who knows what I was going to say? But so I'm really grateful. I feel like lucky and happy and so fucking grateful to have had what I've had. And will I ever come out of the has-been side? Will I ever make it up to the cloud of icons? I don't know. Maybe with a little luck. Or maybe I'll just get pooped out into the toilet of history. But I keep making things because, as Paul Sayre's brother said, it has to be done. And that's it.